Hi, everybody. I'm Tim Fox. And 25 years ago tonight, I was a little kid in central New York looking for something good to watch on TV. It wouldn't take long before I'd find it. The sounds were there, though the look wasn't quite yet developed. Still, this is clearly the start of one of the biggest phenomenons ever to hit central New York. One of the first appearances of Baron Damon.
Good evening. A good evening to you.
Many of the shows were done live. Tapes used to record others were quickly erased and reused. Only 90 seconds of bloopers survived from 5.5 years of the Baron and his buddies.
Have you ever noticed that in these old, slightly haunted houses, that the pictures are so lifelike that they seem to reach right out at you? No. That's a close.
It turned out to be the hottest, highest rated local program in the history of Syracuse.
Studio crew chief Bill Eadie played Boris, the world's shortest monster. Art director Dennis Calkins doubled as Very Harry, the second banana. And a young Mike Price was the Baron.
Bill Grumbles had mentioned that he had ordered a package of half a dozen old horror films, the old Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff films, and then didn't know what he was going to do with these. So I approached him and I said, Mr. G, I said, you know what? I said, I do a fairly decent imitation of the way Bela Lugosi did Count Dracula. He said, just what do you mean by that, Mike? And I said, well, I can talk like this to Mr. Grumbles. And he went, oh.
Grumbles bought the act, and so did most of central New York. The movie cut-ins took off quickly, prompting an afternoon kids show and dozens of public appearances.
We went up to Seneca Falls one time to a Ford dealer, and we both were wondering how many kids were going to show up because it was right on that main highway up there. And we got there was over 1,500 kids in line just to see the Baron. And we just couldn't believe it. The car dealer couldn't believe it either. I don't know if he sold any cars that day or not, but...
And, of course, Baron Damon became the hottest local recording star ever with his recording of the Transylvania Twist.
Could I have a hold of your baby, hold her tight, 'cause Baron Damon is flying tonight. If you see a winter shadow or hear a strange sound, scream your little heads off, the Baron's around.
It did very well. It was distributed just as a promotional gimmick. It was pressed by Capitol, but it had the WNYS label. And it was distributed in our viewing area, about 50, 60-mile radius. But we had kids running into record stores all over the area. The stores would be out of it, and they'd have to reorder it. It seemed like we never had enough, and it sold about 12,000.
Sam and the Twisters played the melody from their local hit, Fooba Wooba John, while the Big Tree Sisters provided backup.
It was during the early years of rock and roll, but I never thought of it as a rock and roll hit or a rock and roll tune. I thought it was just a cute little novelty thing to promote Baron Damon and the station. And yeah, I was surprised that it did as well as it did.
While the Baron's television exploits ended in 1967, Mike Price has never left the public eye, making an occasional appearance like this one for the Syracuse Fire Department.
I'm all wrapped up in this kin-to business. Are you kin to anybody here? Are you related to anybody? A free spirit. Wonderful.
Mike is the one on-air personality to span a quarter century at Channel 9.
You know, old vampires never die. You should know that, Tim.
Thank you very much, Ben.
What a beautiful neck you have.
You guys, and you're all still working here, Bill Eadie, our studio crew chief, and Dennis Calkins, our art director. You're the people behind Baron Damon. Bill, you wrote up a number of the stories. Where did you get the ideas?
We used to sit up a couple of nights, I used to, and go through all kinds of material, whatever was timely. Billboards on the highway. I remember, if I can tell you one story, which I thought was a pretty clever bit. There was an old pickle commercial that was on a billboard. A Foreman Pickle, if I can mention the product's name. And there was 3 people, and the woman in the middle had this sour expression on her face. You knew that she was the one that ate it, and it said, "Who ate the Foreman Pickle?" So I thought, great idea. So we duplicated this billboard effect. Dennis did the artwork and cut out this large cardboard cutout of a skeleton in supposedly a bottle of formaldehyde. Mike held it. Of course, we had no dialogue, except Mike. We could groan and Dennis could gesture, but he had all the lines. So the announce voice said, "Who ate the pickled foreman?" And then Mike just sort of came out with a belching sound.
You know, no, I don't want to do that. No, no.
But it was clever.
I'll say, who ate the pickled foreman, but I won't bother with the other part of that.
Yeah, but anyway, we had good ones and we had bad ones.
Our fill was when Mike ran out of things to say. I think that's why Bill and I were involved. We were called sidekicks because if he couldn't think of anything to say, he kicked us in the side, and then we kicked him back, and then we just turned it into slapstick and rolled around and knocked each other down, and kids loved it. I mean, he'd hit me on the head, and I'd fall down and get up and kick him, and it was, you know, real physical humor.
We had a lot of really creative lines, too, like... you know, if you're on the golf course, remember we had the golf... This is a very original thing. You've probably never heard of anything like this before.
Skull ball, you mean?
Yeah, we're playing skull ball on the golf course, and we're on the green. And what? I said I had my head down there like this. Right? Now, when I tell you, I'll line this up for you, Very. Now, when I say...
you don't know how to do this. I'll tell you, you gumble brain, I'll tell you how to... Oh, I'm doing your voice.
That's all right.
But he'd say, when I shake my head, you hit it. If you got that, you idiot. When I shake my head, you hit it. And I'd look at the camera and go like this, and it was funny. I mean, and then he'd shake his head, and I'd hit him in the head, and he'd roll around and hold it, you know, and everybody'd laugh, including me inside the mask.
When all the Army reserves would go to summer camp at Camp Drum, we had the Transylvanian National Guard go to Camp Dumb, which was a series of cut-ins. Then when the James Bond movies became very popular, 00 negative, he was 00 negative, blood type with a license to kill. We had some great... But I just want to hit on one thing. Dennis, although he played Mike's real sidekick for the most part, and they went everywhere together, and did a lot of things...
Yeah.
You know, everyone remembers the Baron, but no one remembers the guy who did the artwork. And that was a tedious thing because it took us, I think, at least 2 days sometimes to finish taping. You could never do it now. You wouldn't have the time, you know, to do something like that.
One day we were doing this camp, it's now Fort, but in those days it was Camp Drum, and we called it Camp Dumb. And we were in the chow line. Before it would start out, the three of us, like the Three Stooges, we'd start out enlisting together, going to Camp Dumb together, and we'd all be equal in rank. And then by the second cut-in, I'd have hash marks up to here, or chevrons, about up to here, and finally they'd come up on the big stiff collar. These guys still had nothing. When we'd start out, I would say, now we're all in this together, boys. You know, it's all for one and one for all. We're buddies here, we're pals, you know, we'll stick together. By the third cut-in, I had a swagger stick and was giving them orders and so on. We're going through the chow line one time, and I brought in an old World War I helmet that I had had for years, but it didn't have the strap on it to hold it under my chin securely. So we're through the chow line there, and Boris here, Bill, is serving chow. And I got up to him, and I said, "What is this? Here, Boris, you're in the chow line. Now what's the matter with you, you gumble brain? For crying out loud, we don't want any more of this SOS, this stuff on the shingle here." And he picked up another tray and went wham right on the helmet, and it bent the tray, and the helmet, nose chin strap, spun around on my head. Must have twirled on my head a half a dozen times, and I go, "Oh, wow." Well, there, Boris. It was live, so it was more spontaneous, and audiences in those days were more willing to accept flaws and mistakes. In fact, the Baron really was just a clown in a vampire suit. And the sillier it got and the hokier it was, the better people seemed to enjoy it.
You said that it probably couldn't be done because of the amount of work that went into the props and the backgrounds and everything. What about the character? Every day you hear someone say, do the Baron again. Could it fly?
No, not as far as I'm concerned, no. Personally, I'm in a different frame of mind and a different time warp and so on, and I couldn't do that again. I was 25 years old when it started it. And now 25 years later, I can't picture myself at this age doing that again. No.
Folklore says that it takes a stake through the heart or a silver bullet to kill a vampire, but Baron Damon was done in by fire. A very real fire that was discovered shortly before 10:30 on the morning of Saturday, April the 8th, 1967. The blaze apparently started in electrical wiring running through a foot-wide shaft above a studio prop room. Volunteer firefighters from around the area battled for more than 2 hours just to get at the flames, while Channel 9 employees risked their lives to save as much as they could.
I could see the smoke from my house, and well, we better go down and take a look and see what's going on. Threw the friends out, literally. We gotta go see what this, wife and kids in the car, and we start to drive with a station wagon full of junk and down to Shopping Town. And sure enough, it was going. So, okay, you take the car, you go dump all this stuff, and I'll see what's going on. Well, that was about probably 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning, I think. That turned on, obviously, to a very long day.
We were crawling around trying to get some papers and equipment out, and I heard a cough under the smoke in the background, and I crawled through the smoke, and I heard someone breathing, and it turned out to be a fireman who had a gas mask on. He said, "Get the hell out of here, you fool." So,
within minutes, stores above the studio in Shopping Town had to be evacuated when smoke billowed through the shopping center. It took more than a week for some of those businesses to reopen, but the business that was hurt the worst may have been back the fastest.
We were fortunate because I believe the general manager at Channel 24 at that time offered his facility. It so happened that there was a microwave link still installed at Channel 24, so at least we were able to get a signal out. I think we were off the air somewhere around 10:30, 11 o'clock. We were back on the air, I think at 3, if I recall correctly, somewhere around 3 or 3:30 at Wide World of Sports.
It was a little strange working out of a different place with different people, but it worked out really great.
To my knowledge, I think it was the only time that two stations, one, obviously very, very different in their program philosophies and their approach to programming. Obviously, one a public station, one a commercial station. We shared a facility, and I mean shared, right down to the point where we were literally on the same piece of equipment within minutes or seconds when the other station may have needed it. About the time I got used to making the ride from my house to Liverpool was about the time we came back into Shopping Town. I just gotten used to it at that point. But it was an experience.